Hello, I am Cheryl Abrams Davis, your 2025 president for Maryland Realtors. Welcome to 5 Questions with Cleveland Horton. In September 2024, Mr. Horton was appointed as the executive director of the Maryland Commission on Civil Rights by Governor Wes Moore. Throughout his distinguished career, Mr. Horton has championed the cause of equality and justice to foster a more inclusive and equitable society. In 1968, the Fair Housing Act was passed to set precedents of anti-bias and non-discrimination. Fair Housing Month is recognized every April, even though fair housing laws should be adhered to and acknowledged each and every day of every single month. Mr. Horton, welcome. How are you today?
I'm doing good, Madam President. Thanks for having me here today. It is truly a pleasure and an honor to be before you this morning.
Thank you so much. I just want to say I pulled up your website so that
Mm.
I could gain an understanding of your organization's core mission and vision. And even though I've attended some of your events in the past, I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't missing anything. So when I pulled up your organization's core mission and vision, here's what it says. It is the mission of the Maryland Commission on Civil Rights to ensure opportunity for all throughout the enforcement of Maryland's laws against discrimination in employment, housing, public accommodations, and state contracts to provide educational outreach services related to provisions of the laws and to promote and improve civil rights in Maryland. And it also said that your vision is to have a state that is free from any trace of unlawful discrimination. All that I can say is, wow, what an enormous task to play the equalizer in all of those areas. We know that today our main focus is going to be on the fair housing portion of your mission. And we appreciate everything that your organization does to fulfill those goals and mission. Now, that's a big task. How did you end up here
Um,
in this role?
it's a long journey, right? I tell folks all the time that I don't come from a long line of civil rights advocates, right? Honestly, I got my role in this particular line of work by simply I was looking for a job, right? I needed an opportunity to take care of my family. There was a job here at the Maryland Commission on Civil Rights for me to come in as an entry level investigator, and I took advantage of the opportunity. I've been with this agency for 17 years, so over the last 17 years, I've truly had the opportunity to kind of grow, mature, and really develop a true passion and commitment for civil rights. Um, it's amazing how you can just go from looking for a job to really finding something that falls within your passion. Many of us, we go through our daily activities looking for and trying to connect our passion and our purpose with how we make money. And I've been fortunate enough to be able to do that for 17 years. So they say, if you do something you love, you'll never work a day in your life. And I've been fortunate enough to be able to do that here at the Maryland Commission on Civil Rights for 17 years.
Awesome. Now, little birdie told me that you are in the real estate industry or you were in the real estate industry. Give us a little history about that,
Yeah,
that piece.
something like that, right? I got my real estate license back in 2016. So I am a licensee. So I would say part of the family, right? But it's hard, right? Because I tell folks that, I also have in my government role the responsibility to make sure that I'm holding folks accountable as it pertains to fair housing rules and regulations. So I kind of play both sides. But I think that it gives me a unique advantage because it gives me a perspective of truly understanding the real estate industry by being a part of it. So being able to recommend policies, regulations, and laws based off of true practice and not just what we think we should do. I do think sets me apart and gives me a unique advantage in the role that I play.
And I agree, because I think that, I mean, honestly speaking, I didn't really understand. I didn't even know about your organization until probably a few years ago when I was invited to attend an event that was held in Baltimore for the annual gala. I don't recall if you were there at that time or not, but I was like, wow, I didn't even know that this organization existed, and especially in the housing arena. And it's unfortunate that today in 2025, we're still talking about this, years later. But what are you seeing as the most common fair housing violations in the real estate industry today that people just may not, be thinking of or may not be aware of just based on, some of their biases,
Yeah, I think, I always say
unconscious
that
biases?
I
Sorry.
always say the more things change, the more things tend to stay the same, right? So even though we've gone through decades of what many would call progress, we still do see, different types of patterns of housing discrimination. But whether that's the refusal to rent or sell, whether that's steering prospective tenants or buyers to specific neighborhoods based on race or ethnicity, and denying people reasonable accommodations, those who have disabilities, continue to be, alarmingly common amongst fair housing violations. As many folks know, we recently added source of income as a protected class here at a state level, and we continue to see a significant escalation in the source of income discrimination cases that we're seeing as our agency. So, I think folks really need to understand that, fair housing violations don't just impact individuals, right? They really do kind of, when we take a look at everything that happens from a fair housing violation, we know that it really does erode the fabric of all of our communities. And if we really do want a state where we say that it's, an opportunity and it's truly equal, every real estate professional must recognize that compliance with fair housing laws isn't just a legal obligation. For me, I always say it's a moral imperative, and I always reference in many of my conversations with folks in the real estate industry that I feel like the real estate industry really are the foot soldiers to the Fair Housing Act, because we are on the front lines of everything that happens as it pertains to fair housing, and we do need to make sure, one, that we're trained, and one, that we are calling out violations as we see them, because typically as real estate professionals, we see them first. So it is important for us to educate our clients, educate ourselves, and just hold each other accountable.
Correct, and I guess that's one of the reasons why we have to take that fair housing class,
Yeah.
every cycle that we get our license renewed. But in addition to us taking that fair housing class, are there any other resources that MCCR has that would be good for us as realtors?
That's a great question, Madam President. I think that we have a whole host of different training opportunities that we can offer, whether it's the boards, individual brokerages, organizations, lenders, anybody who's interested in learning about fair housing. We can really craft any type of training that you need in any particular area, right? So we do have on our, if you go to our website, there is a whole host of training topics, but I want folks to understand too that we do a high level amount of customization, right? So you tell us what you need, and we'll make sure that we get you what you need to make sure that all of your folks are trained. I also would say that there's a number of trainings offered through HUD, which is Department of Housing and Urban Development. It's a little sketchy right now because of the environment in the federal government, but for right now, they still are a resource from a training standpoint. You also have the National Fair Housing Alliance, which has always been a partner for the Maryland Commission on Civil Rights, and they also offer a whole host of training opportunities. I think that they're coming up on their second annual Responsible AI conference, which I think is happening sometime late spring, early summer. So I do, again, advise folks take advantage of that opportunity, register for that particular training, because it is a very information-packed training. I plan on attending. There'll be a number of other fair housing professionals that will be attending that as well. So I just think it's a good opportunity for folks within the real estate industry to take advantage of that particular training. But I also
And
think, I think for me, when we think about training, that is really more about less about the training and also about the action, right? Because if you're just going to take the training to check a box and there's no accountability, right? We are holding folks accountable to what we just learned in the training, then the training becomes meaningless. And I say the same thing about the Fair Housing Act, because without accountability, the Fair Housing Act is just words on a piece of paper, right? So the important part about training is to take the information that you are learning, use that information to educating your clients, but also use it to hold your colleagues accountable so that we can make sure that we are reducing fair housing violations throughout the state.
Thank you. And what we'll do for our members is we'll make sure that at the end of the segment, we will leave them with the website information for your organization. And I believe that your organization has a few events coming up, and I'll let you get to that later on as we get through our segment. But thank you. We'll make sure that everybody has that information. And you made a good point at the first question where you said that you have a lot of resources for our local associations, for brokerages, for managers to really just reach out to you as a resource and have you come in and participate in one of their office meetings or provide a training for their entire brokerage. So thank you for sharing that information, because I don't think a lot of people knew that. And I'm just saying that because I'm an office manager in our office and I didn't know that you did that. So thank you for sharing that information with us today.
Of course, but I think too, Madam President, that so many people get nervous, right? Because they feel like, well, if we reach out to the Maryland Commission on Civil Rights and they come out, that we somehow are going to kind of be looking in every drawer or every file cabinet that's in that office, right, trying to find something to issue a violation, and that's absolutely not what we do. I tell everybody I don't play the I gotcha game, right? There's no setup with me, and that's through my leadership. Through our agency, we just don't play that game. Our thought is we rather engage you in conversation and in learning, so that you understand what to do to make sure you're doing the right thing. We aren't coming out to, ask your employees questions or try to figure out what's really going on. That is just not the game that we play.
Right. But if you send an investigator, that's a whole nother
That's a
situation.
whole nother situation.
All right. So, there's always new laws coming out, unfortunately, in regards to fair housing laws. So, from your purview, are there any recent changes or updates to the fair housing laws that we need to be made aware of? I believe that recently one of the delegates put forth a piece of legislation dealing with appraisal bias. I wasn't sure if you had any updated information. I know it's pretty fairly new. Is there anything that you can share with us regarding any updates in the fair housing arena?
Yeah, so we are, just like everybody right now, keeping our eyes on session, right?
Yeah,
Many of the bills that were crafted, many of them didn't make it through. Obviously the state's in a deficit, so the priority this session was trying to financially recover.
we
Uh,
know.
so anything that had a fiscal note to it, um, didn't survive this particular session. So we haven't seen on our end any major fair housing initiatives that have changed as a result of new legislation this session. One of the things, for me, I continue to update those within the real estate industry on is just continue to get trained on source of income, because source of income is steadily climbing. Right now, disability is the number one protected class in the number of fair housing complaints that we receive. But source of income is steadily on the rise. If it continues at this pace, source of income will be the number one protected class in about 2 years. So our concern right now is just that, realtors, brokers continue to train their folks on source of income discrimination, knowing what it is, how to address it with your clients, because many of our clients are unaware of what source of income discrimination is. So we need to make sure that we're educating them and that we are doing the right thing from an advertising standpoint as well. We have seen a high number of advertisements that are now in violation of the Fair Housing Act as a result of source of income being passed. So we're still seeing things like, for example, no Section 8, things like that. Those things are per se violations of the Fair Housing Statute. So we just want to make sure that from a source of income standpoint, that folks truly are getting the training that they need in reference to source of income discrimination. And we are more than willing to come out and do any training around that for anyone that needs it.
Okay, and this is a question. I mean, I know that most realtors should go to their manager or broker if they have questions. Are there also like resources for the general public on your website if they have questions about, the source of income piece or disability piece? Is there information on your website that pertains to those two areas?
There is some, definitely not enough. And I've been talking to our team about that. So we will be issuing some guidances probably in the next 30 to 60 days. The first one that will be issued will speak directly to source of income. So I would definitely tell folks to look out for that one. And the reason why we're going to be doing that is that we want folks to hear directly from us, right? Because we know that folks talk amongst themselves.
Correct.
Folks are getting other people that train them on source of income. And there are a lot of people that like to speak for us. So we feel like this is a perfect opportunity for us to let folks know where we stand, our interpretation of our own statute, right? Because a lot of folks, when they do these trainings, they are interpreting our statute, which is Title 20. But the best organization to interpret Title 20 is the Maryland Commission on Civil Rights because we wrote it, right? It's our statute. We're the ones that enforce it. So as we issue these guidance memos, they will really let folks know our interpretation, how we enforce it, right? What source of income means. It'll give you some great examples. I think that Maryland Realtors has some documents around source of income that we've had the opportunity to review, and we concur with everything that thus far that Maryland Realtors has issued in reference to source of income. But we just want to put some information up on our website so that folks, as they're going to our website, they can get more information about source of income around disability discrimination, and those things will be coming out in the next 30 to 60 days.
And I'm putting a plug in right now for our communications team that we're going to have to save you a space in our next Maryland Realtors magazine so that when that information comes out, we can quickly get it out to our members as well. So thank
Absolutely.
you for that. It's all about collaboration.
Absolutely.
Well, moving right along, what role does implicit bias play in housing discrimination? And for some people who don't really understand what implicit bias is, maybe you can just go into a little bit of detail about that. And the second piece is how can brokers and agents work to minimize this implicit bias?
Yeah, I think another great question, Madam President. I think, implicit bias is another one of those. It's been around forever, right? But it's really, I guess, in recent times, I would say one of those buzzwords, right? That we do hear a lot of organizations using, a lot of policies being crafted around implicit bias. But when we think about implicit bias, implicit bias really is one of the most dangerous forms of discrimination because it operates beneath the surface, right? And we think about discrimination, whether it's, overt discrimination where there's no signs that say no blacks here, no whites here, no males, no females, or whatever it might be. But implicit bias lies underneath the surface. You can't necessarily put your finger on implicit bias, which makes it one of the most dangerous forms of discrimination. Um, and it's deeply impactful, right? So when we think about it's the gut feeling that causes an agent to assume a black family wouldn't be interested in certain neighborhoods, or really the unconscious hesitation when renting to someone with a disability, right? We've all seen some of those videos where
Right.
families are asking the agents, to give them a list of homes that are for sale, and agents will respond with, "Oh, well, you don't want to live there, you don't want to live there," right? Because of their own assumptions, right? That just because I'm black, that I want to live in a community with all black people, or just because I'm white, that I want to live in a community with all white people, right? And that we're steering folks based off of our own implicit bias. And that's really where it gets dangerous, right? Or if you have someone that has a disability, that we're automatically assuming that this isn't the best property for them because they have a disability. Those things can be very dangerous, and again, are violations of our fair housing statute. I think that for us, from our vantage point, the first step truly in like minimizing implicit bias is acknowledging that we all have it, right? It's always interesting when we engage in conversations around bias and folks are like, "I don't see color," right? Or the historic famous line, "I have black friends," right? That when we talk about bias, we all must acknowledge that we all have a certain level of bias. I have it, right? Madam President, I'm sure you have it, right? We all have it, and we must make sure that we acknowledge it. And acknowledging it isn't a bad thing. Acknowledging it is just saying, hey, I know that with me based off of my experiences, right? That I come with a certain level of bias. Having bias is not a bad thing. Acting on the bias is where you get in trouble, right?
And
Um,
that's a key thing that you just said,
Yep.
acting on it.
Acting on it, right? So I think that the second step is actively working against it, and that's through training, self-reflection, and deliberate policy changes. I think it's important for us. We talking about bias is really about self-reflection. What are my biases, right? Am I allowing my biases to impact the work that I do? Am I allowing my biases to impact those that I interact with? We all have to do a high level of self-reflection all the time. We talk about in the real estate world, right? This journey to self-mastery, right? And that this journey
Correct.
to self-mastery is an ongoing thing. But self-reflection is a critical part to self-mastery. So I just want folks to definitely be mindful about that. It's really about moving beyond good intentions and embedding equity into every decision, every policy, and every interaction. So I just think for me, that's the key when we think about implicit bias.
And that's important to note. And it could just be you're looking through houses for your clients to tour, and you assume that because someone has a certain disability, that when you see this house with a lot of steps, that they may not be interested in that. And maybe you don't include that
Mhm.
listing as something that they would be interested in because you've already assessed that that may not be something that will work for them, but that should be something that they should decide for themselves.
Yeah,
And I
we
just
always say, we always have, full disclosure, right? I'm affiliated with Keller Williams. So within that Keller Williams space, we always talk about being bold, right? And for me, when we think about implicit bias, being bold is being willing to acknowledge that you have bias, right? And acknowledging what those biases are and working to address those biases within yourself, which will allow you to make better decisions.
Okay. So if we don't learn anything else from this segment today, besides all the other things, there's a lot of good information here though. This is definitely something that all of us need to work on better. And now that we're talking about it, I'm sure that as people go along their day, and work, it's going to be something that, comes up as they're doing their task. Like something just may pop up and say, oh, you know what? Now I get it. Now I see exactly what they were talking about. So hopefully we'll all be better in that space moving forward. How has your organization worked to combat housing discrimination and promote equitable housing opportunities? Like, are there some active things that you've done? How can we also be better as, brokers, managers, realtors in making sure that we're doing the same thing? And, do you have like a short story where fair housing advocacy led to a positive change in a community that you can share with us as an example? I know it's gonna
Um,
be a loaded two-part question.
Always, when people always say, "Do you have a short story?" It's always like, "All right, let me figure out which one is short," because every story can be quite long. But I think I want folks to understand that, here at the Maryland Commission on Civil Rights, we don't just investigate discrimination. Our job is to really work to dismantle discrimination. So when you think about our vision, and our vision being to really have a state that is free from any unlawful trace of discrimination, right? And that's whether it's in employment, housing, public accommodations, commercial leasing, state contracts, or the provision of health services. In doing that, it goes way beyond just investigating complaints of discrimination. It truly is the work that we do to every day dismantle discrimination throughout our entire state. And we do that by kind of educating, advocating, and collaborating with communities, housing providers, and policymakers to create systemic change. And folks are always, when we think about the climate that we're in now, where many of us are, whether you watch the news all day like me, and all evening, or whether you're just tired, right? Many of us are tired. We see the news, we see the rhetoric, right? Many of us are concerned. Many folks just don't know what to do, right? It's important that when we think about how do we dismantle discrimination, right? How do we combat fair housing discrimination? One person at a time, right? This is not the time for us to pause. this is not the time for us to be so frustrated that we're paralyzed, right? Sometimes they always say you can get paralysis by analysis, right? That we are so busy while we take a look that we feel like the work is so daunting, right? That we're at such a crossroads that we just don't know what to do, right? That people are literally kind of like just paused, just like, all right, I don't know which way to go. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to say. I urge everybody to just take small steps, right? And celebrate those small victories, right? Because the journey to dismantling discrimination, we will not see it in my lifetime, right? Um, but my goal is to help us through my lifetime, move us closer to dismantling discrimination, right? So I want folks to understand that the journey isn't that we expect that we are just going to rid our country of discrimination in a matter of years, because it's just not going to happen. It hasn't happened. It isn't going to happen. But what we can do is in our own spaces, do what we can do, right? Control the controllable, right? Having the conversations that we need to have, holding the folks that are closest to us and in our spaces accountable, right, for treating people right. When we think about discrimination in any form, right, in any segment, in any industry, it really is about doing the right thing, right?
Yes.
That's really what it's about, right? It's about treating people like people, right? And placing humanity back where it belongs. And that's in our communities. And if we can do that, right, as simple as it sounds to me, I know it may seem like a daunting task to other people, but it's really a simple task, right? It's really walking down the street, and instead of looking down on our cell phones, maybe picking our heads up once in a while to tell somebody hello, right? Going to work, and instead of just going to our offices and not speaking to our coworkers, maybe asking people, hey, how are you? And actually meaning it, right? Asking people how they are. I think for a lot of us, we've lost our humanity and we're losing it day by day. And how do we ensure that we bring that humanity back and make sure that we're treating people like people, right? That's really what's big for me. So I think that as I take a look at what's happening with whether it's individuals, whether it's organizations, there are so many of us right now that are in this state of shock. And not to get political, but we are just in the state of we just don't know what to do, right? The world appears to be falling apart, right? But it's our responsibility to hold the line. If the world appears to be falling apart, then just hold your piece together, right? And if you hold your piece together, and I hold my piece together, right? And Dan holds his piece together, right? And all the realtors that may be watching this hold their piece together. We'll hold our line. And if everybody does that, we'll hold the line so that our world doesn't continue to fall apart, right? So that's really what it's about for me. That's really what it's about for our agency. Even though we're charged with enforcing discrimination, for me, the enforcement of our fair housing laws is all of our responsibility, not just that of Maryland Realtors, not just that of the Maryland Commission on Civil Rights, but it is that of every licensee, right? It is that of every individual in this industry that represents clients within the real estate industry. It's all of our responsibilities the same, right? And we should take that responsibility seriously, and we should hold our colleagues accountable to that responsibility at a very high level as well. So there are many stories that we have when we think about what the work that we've done at the commission. I think for me, the most glaring ones are the ones where we've been able to ensure that those individuals who have been locked out of the rental market because of their source of income, that these individuals now have the opportunity to live where they choose to live, regardless of their source of income. Those have been some of the probably most powerful and impactful stories of individuals who have been living in homeless shelters because folks wouldn't rent to them. Because they had a voucher. And now these individuals are able to move out, move their families out, their children into a home, right? And provide them with some level of stability. Those have, in more recent times, been some of the more impactful and powerful stories because many of us, right, take for, again, many of us take for granted the ability of being able to call somewhere home, right?
Right.
We think that it's just a given. And there are so many of our fellow citizens who don't have that, who don't have the ability to call somewhere home. And that is very powerful and that is very impactful. So just being able to pass legislation that now allows individuals to find a place that they can call home, where their kids can develop friends, childhood friends that go on to be adult friendships, right? Everybody's got BFFs now, right? Where individuals have access to good health care, quality food options. And again, just a place to call home have been for us here some of the most impactful and powerful stories.
Thank you. Now, as we close out this segment, are there any upcoming initiatives or advocacy efforts your organization is working on that the real estate community could support? I understand that you have a few sessions coming up, so if you can just, give us the information for that, and we'll post it as well. I believe that we've already posted some of that information in our Mailing Realtors report, but if you can just remind everyone what's coming up, that would be awesome. And any final thoughts that you'd like to share?
Sure, I appreciate that. I think obviously it being Fair Housing Month, we are trying to put on as many events we can around fair housing. So I think what's today's Thursday, so every Wednesday this month, we are doing a fair housing webinar. So the information is on our website for that as well. So every Wednesday this month, we have a different topic around fair housing. That's going to culminate into an in-person fair housing symposium, which I think is I want to say April the 28th or the 29th.
Okay,
Um,
we'll make sure we get all the information out to our
yeah.
members as well. Thank
But
you.
that is definitely on our website as well. And one of the events that you mentioned, we do have our annual Civil Rights Gala that is coming up. That's August the 23rd, 2025. We are hopeful that Maryland Realtors will continue to be a sponsor for that great event. And we urge all of the real estate industry to buy a ticket. Don't wait, because our tickets do always sell out. We had a very extraordinary event last year. This event this year will be better. So I'm hoping to have a room full of those within the real estate industry. I always say you're my family. And I'm hoping that my family doesn't let me down. They haven't let me down yet, and I don't expect that they'll let me down this year either. So we do urge everyone to go online, get your tickets, buy a ticket for a friend, right? Buy a table, right? We'd love to have you. So again, my last words are that, hey, look, if not us, then who, right? It is our responsibility to make sure that we are protecting the fair housing and rights of everybody. That's what we signed up for when we got our licenses. That's what we signed up for when we decided to be a part of this profession. And I just want to make sure that all of us are taking that seriously. And if there's anything that I can do, if there's questions, I always tell folks I am accessible. Reach out to me, call me, send me an email. I am more than happy to discuss issues with you. Now, obviously, I can't give legal advice because my general counsel would pop me upside my head if I did that. But I can give hypothetical. I can respond to hypothetical situations and provide as much information as I can to make sure that we're making the right decisions and that we're taking the right actions.
Awesome. You have been so good today by providing us with your time and talent and all of this information. I have learned some things myself that I didn't know before we sat down today. So thank you for your time. And I will make sure that I go ahead and register for some of those upcoming events. So
I
you'll see me
appreciate
on
it.
the Zoom.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
All right. Thank you so much.
Have a good one.
You too. Thanks.
Bye bye.